All right, guys, so in part 3 of our Punnett Squares practice, we're really going to get into story problems and how do we even decide what the genotypes of our parents are. And then we're going to determine the probability and the genotypes and the phenotypes of the offspring or the children, and then look at the ratios and maybe a little bit of the percentages too. So we're going to start on number 1 in this worksheet. If you don't already have the Punnett Squares worksheet, you need to get that right now. But we're going to look at number 1 together. Let me zoom this in so you can see it real well. All right, and this again, I said it's a story problem. So we have a widow's peak is dominant to no widow's peak. And remember, we said that a widow's peak is when you have hair that kind of peaks like this. All right, and no widow's peak would mean that you have a straight hairline, okay? So a homozygous dominant female is crossed with a recessive male. All right, there's a couple important things that we need here. We need homozygous dominant, and we need recessive. Those are some important informations. So dominant, we have to ask ourselves, are we going to use the capital or lowercase letter? Okay, well, dominant means capital. And homozygous means they are the same case. So we're going to use 2 letters that are the same case. So we're going to use 2 capital letter W's for the female. And it says right here, mom's genotype. So we're actually going to write this in here. It's asking for the mom's genotype. It's 2 capital W's. And it's crossed with a recessive male. So recessive means lowercase. So we're going to use little w's. And a lot of kids ask, well, if it only says recessive, so how do I know if it's going to be a big W or a little w with that little w already? Well, let's think about this. If I put a capital W down here, we're not going to see the recessive trait. We're going to see the dominant trait. It would be heterozygous for that dominant trait. So whenever you see recessive, it's going to be homozygous. It's going to be the same case for both letters, and those are going to be 2 small w's. And to make sure that I know the difference between the w's, I use pointy w's for capital, and I use kind of curvy w's for lowercase. Some people might actually make it more of a cursive, and they'll add like little q's on the end of their lowercase w's. That can help you as well. So now that we know our genotypes, it's time to place them on our Punnett square. So our mom is homozygous dominant. I'm going to place her on the top. I could place her on the side, but I'm going to decide to place both on the top. Again, I like to use different colors. It helps me look at this. You can use 2 colors or you can just use your pen, whatever you'd like. And our dad, he is recessive, so he's going to go on the side. Okay? Now, I'm going to do 1 box at a time, and I see that this is capital, and I like to write my capitals first, so I'm going to, the mom gave a big W, and the dad gave a little w to this individual. And again, in this box, the mom gave a big W, and the dad gave a little w. And down here, the mom gave a big W, and the dad gave a little w. And right here, the mom gave a big W, and go across, the dad gave a little w. So we figured out our offspring. We see what the combinations are, and that's what we have to answer next, the offspring genotypes. So the genotypes are the combination of genes. So for my genotypes, I have a big W, little w. I have another big W, little w. I don't need to write it again. And another one, and another one. So all of these, each of these are big W, little w. They are heterozygous. All right, so when we look at their genotypic ratio, we can't really compare it to anything. So we could just write 4. Okay, all 4 of them are big W, little w. And really, we would reduce that to the number 1. So I'm going to write or 1 in parentheses. Because really, we're saying that every single one of these parents' offspring will be big W, little w. They will be heterozygous for widow's peak. And that brings us to our phenotype. So when we're looking at our offspring's phenotype, we have to look at what would we actually see. So remember, if we have a capital letter W, that's going to be the dominant trait, and it's going to hide any lowercase. So this box right here, we're going to have a widow's peak. We have a capital letter that covers the recessive gene, so we have another widow's peak, a widow's peak, and a widow's peak. So all of these phenotypes are widow's peaks. I'm just going to write widow's peaks or widow's peak. And how many of them would we actually see as widow's peak? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we would say that that reduces down to 1 because every single one of these has a widow's peak. So we would say or 1. All right, if that confuses you, the or 1, you can just write 4. All 4 of them have big W, little w as their genotype. All 4 of them would be seen as the widow's peak phenotype. I realize that these spaces are small, so if you need to do this on a separate sheet of paper, that's fine as well. Go ahead and move over to number 4. All right, number 4. We're going to skip 2 and 3 and go right to 4. It says cleft chin is dominant to no cleft chin. So we have big C and little c. A heterozygous female and a heterozygous male are crossed. A couple things. We need to know heterozygous and heterozygous. All right, that's what the male and female, the mom and dad, were crossed together. And we're trying to figure out what their offspring are going to look like. So remember, we said a cleft chin. It looks kind of like this. It might have a dimple in it, whereas no cleft chin is just a nice smooth chin at the bottom. Okay? So mom's genotype, she's heterozygous. Heterozygous means different. All right, so we're looking at 2 different case letters, which means we have to use a big C, and we're going to have to use a little c. So that's the mom's genotype. Big C, little c. And it says that we're crossing it with a heterozygous male. Again, this is going to be a big C, little c. So dad's genotype is big C, little c. So I'm going to write in the parents' genotypes. This time I'll do it in one color so you can see what this looks like with one color. So here's one parent across the top, big C, little c. And one parent down the side, big C, little c. And I really try and make that size difference because it's going to be a whole lot easier to see. I'm even going to make my big C really, really bold so I can tell, hey, this is a big C. So if I go one box at a time, one parent's going to give a big C, and the other parent is going to give a big C. One parent's going to give a little c, and the other parent's going to give a big C. So even though it's the second one, I'm going to write it first. Remember, we always like the capital letters to go first. So the big C is going to go first. One parent gives a big C. One parent gives a little c, writing that second. And then one parent gives a little c, and the other parent gives a little c. We've filled out our Punnett square. Now we look at the offspring genotypes. So we have big C as one genotype. We also have big C, little c as a genotype. Right, so genotypes are the combinations of letters. There's another big C, little c. I don't need to write it again. And then there's a little c, little c. So this time when we do a ratio, we've got 3 different things we're comparing. How many big C squares were there? Well, there was just one. Use my colons. All right, how many big C, little c squares were there? There were 2. And how many little c squares were there? There was 1. Now, this worksheet doesn't talk to you about percentages, but each of these boxes is worth 25%. So 25, 25, 25, and 25%. So if I wanted to add percentages, 25% of these parents' offsprings would be big C for the genotype. 25 and 25, so 25 plus 25 is 50. 50% would be heterozygous. They would still have the cleft chin. And then 25% down here would be recessive for no cleft chin. Okay, you don't need to have those, but it's kind of nice to see those percentages as well. So actually, those shouldn't be colons, those should be percentages. Okay. Now we look at the offspring phenotype. What are we actually going to see? Well, anytime that we see a big C, it says we're going to see a cleft chin. So this guy's going to have a cleft chin, cleft chin, cleft chin. And over here we have no cleft. This is the recessive. In order to see it, we have to have two lowercase c. So there's our recessive. And when we talk about our phenotypic ratio, we need to see how many have cleft chins and how many don't have cleft chin. So 1, 2, 3 have cleft chins because they have the capital letter C, compared to 1 that does not have the cleft chin. It's recessive. We don't see it. So all we see is that there's no cleft chin because the cleft chin allele, that big C, is not in there. And if we wanted to do the percentages, well, there's 3 boxes, 25, 50, 75, that have cleft chin. So 75% would have the cleft chin, and 25% would have no cleft chin. Okay. So the rest of this worksheet you should be able to do on your own. It's important to remember that if you see homozygous dominant, that means that you're going to have 2 capital letters. If all you see are the words recessive, those are going to be 2 lowercase letters. And if you see the words heterozygous, you're going to see 1 capital and 1 lowercase letter. All right, so that should help you with the rest of this worksheet. Good luck. You should also note that there is a back to this, so if you flip it over, there are 3 more problems on the back. Don't be discouraged if you don't get this right away. You can always come back and watch this video later if you need a refresher, or you can ask for help from a classmate or from your teacher.